You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Cricket Podcast for a special episode, a collaboration with Guerrilla Cricket. I've been doing commentary over at Guerrilla Cricket Towers all afternoon, and so I thought it would be nice if we got a Guerrilla Cricket voice on, a voice from Australia and also a voice from a different generation. I'm Jack Cope, I'm joined by Messi Jez for today's roundup of the third day of the second test of the 2023 Ashes. How are you doing, Jez?
I'm excellent, thanks, Jack. It's more sort of creation of a supergroup, isn't it? When you have the stars coming together like this. I'm excited by it because we do roundup every night. You do roundup every night, and if we do them together, it saves time and travel, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. It's cricket commentary's version of the raconteurs or something like that. A couple of sponsors. We've got dual sponsorship for this show, so just a shout out to our sponsor, SeriousCricket.co.uk. You can use the code TCP23 for 10% off there. We know lots of people have. We've been chatting with them recently, so if you haven't, great opportunity to do so. It's going to be lovely and sunny in England at the weekend. Get yourself some new shoes. You might not have time to knock in a bat by Sunday. And Jez, Guerrilla Cricket's coverage of the Ashes has been sponsored by
Ponting Wines. We've got a whole range of excellent wines from Ponting Wines in Australia, the Ricky Ponting, of course. And you can get a 15% discount if you go to our website, guerrillacricket.com. On the very front there'll be a story about Ponting Wines and a link to pontingwines.com.au. If you click on that link, it'll bring you up with your 15% discount, which is very good value, and it's excellent wine to have. Just in relation to serious cricket, before we go on, I heard that you used some gear this weekend that helped you win a match by 1 wicket in the 50th over or something, did you?
No, so I think that was last year. We were talking on air about the team we're playing this weekend. We beat by 1 wicket in the 40th over of the 40-over game. Our number 11 hit a 2 over cover, and we're talking, a foot over cover to win the match. It was a pretty good game.
I heard that you used your serious cricket bat to hit a ball out of the ground onto a boat going down the river. Is that right?
That's true. I mean, the boat was stationary, so there's a slight limit to my skills. But there was a boat moored by the pitch, and I did hit the boat. Which was one of my highlights of last season. Right, Jez, it was an interesting day's cricket. England started 4 down, and it looked like, Max and I last night, we really thought England were back in the match. I think we called our show, Are England Back in the Ashes? Yeah. What happened today?
Well, to a certain extent, what happened today was a continuation of when the clown car came out yesterday. And everything went crazy as soon as Australia started bowling short rubbish. Somewhere in some of the batter's mind is a switch that goes, short ball, I've got to hit this for 6 right now, and it doesn't matter how it looks as long as I have a go. To be fair to Stokes, he was out very early on to a really good ball that lifted on him a bit. He got an outside edge. Not outside edge. He got a leading edge to it and was caught, and that started the procession. We saw him get succeeded, by Harry Brook playing an appallingly stupid shot. He just reached his 50. He stepped back. He missed the previous ball. He decided, I'll have another go at doing that rotten shot, and got caught the next ball. And then we had Bairstow, who just hit a nice little easy catch to mid-on, and he was gone. That wasn't doing anything crazy. It just wasn't played very well. And of course, by this stage, Stuart Broad had come in at number 8, which is a portent of doom for England if Broad's at 8. And so they went from 311 for 7 to 325 all out. Head, if you don't mind, taking 2 wickets for how many? 17 of 7 overs. And Cummins getting the final wicket of Tong, as some like to call him, if they can't spell. So that left Australia, surprisingly, with a considerable lead of about 90, was it? Yes, 91.
Yeah, ballpark. Yeah, yeah.
Uh, uh, I don't think any of us went into the day expecting that. Uh, Kawaja and Warner came out to bat, and it has to be said that until stumps which were drawn early because of rain, uh, I think England bowled pretty well. Kawaja is still not out on 58. Warner was LBW to tongue, excellent delivery for 25 off 76 balls. Marnus Labuschagne was caught by Brookoff Anderson for 30. And Stephen Smith is still not out for 6. So Australia are 130 for 2. They lead by 221 runs with 2 days to play. You've got to say they're very much in the box seat, but who knows what can happen. It looks like fine weather for the rest of the match, and the pitch seems to be playing fairly true, not fast, but it's no nightmare to be batting on.
Yeah, I mean, if from an England point of view, and I think normally I've got Max or Ross here to do the England fan perspective, and I can like play it a bit more neutral. But I think from an England point of view, the first thing to acknowledge is that it was a very disappointing first hour and a half of play. I was kind of lucky, Jez, in that I had to do some actual work in my day job. So I was in meetings back to back from 11 till 12, and all I got were the wicket alerts, so I didn't get to see the kind of dismal subsidence of the England innings live. But by all accounts, it was pretty shocking. I got my phone blew up with messages from Twitter, WhatsApp, Facebook, all the various channels that people can contact us via to tell me or to try and get an angle on what I thought about Harry Brook. I mean, it seems like it's going to go down as one of the most embarrassing dismissals in the history of Test cricket.
Oh, sorry.
As someone from an Australian point of view, were you jumping for joy, or was it kind of like shock that England were doing what they were doing?
Yeah, it was shock. I mean, it's funny because you'd think all I want to see is England get out and Australia get a lead, but it started yesterday. I was actually really angry with the way England were batting yesterday afternoon because they've been in the position to put the foot on Australia's throat, and they blew it. They completely blew it away, and they put themselves in the situation where this morning, with one good ball taking out Stokes, who batted really in a very conservative and sensible manner last night. He was unlucky to get such a good ball, but once he was gone, there was really nothing left when you got Brook playing a dreadful shot and Bairstow just not playing very well. So, yeah, of course, there's a sense of relief, but I also want to see some competition. I want to see this, frankly, the last Ashes series.
I mean, Australia were getting pounded by India 2 weeks ago or 2 months ago. It's how was that for competition?
But when it came down to it, there were weird pitches, but there was considerable competition somewhere there. I mean, Australia won a Test match, much to our surprise, and from there on, it actually became quite seriously competitive. But the last Ashes series in Australia was dreadful to watch because it was just not a competition. I love a tight game. The game at Edgbaston, everybody enjoyed it, English or Australian. And I know there's bullshit about, it felt like we won. But at the end of the day, a really close Test match is just exciting for everyone, and we really enjoy it. And if England can't get their shit together, then, this is going to be a dismal series from here on. I think the truth is that, mate, you may correct me on this, but on a pound-for-pound basis, comparing the English talent and the Australian talent, I think most people will concede that Australia is better equipped. But what gives England the chance to win is that the way they played last summer with that lack of fear in their batting and a capacity to play shots they wouldn't have been daring to play previously. And that, I love that. But people talk about Bazball as if it's more than that. For me, it's not. But anyhow, it's not baseball. Anyhow, there's no such thing really. But the engagement of the brain is a really important part of making those things work. And that's just what seemed to be lacking in some of the batters. I just don't know what sort of switch was flipped to make him play that. But, by the same token, because of what's happened in the last year, there is still a degree of uncertainty. England still could go out and make 420 on the last day at 7 and over, and we'd also that was exciting and wonderful. Or they might lose by 300 runs. Who fucking knows? It's weird.
I mean, yeah, I think no, a few people have said it. I mean, I think when baseball or what England have been doing, however you want to put it, has worked over the last, or how it has worked over the last year, rather, I think has mainly been about them choosing the right moment to exploit the conditions. It's not. I think there's probably quite a few people tuning into this series expecting, or who think that in every test in the last 14 tests, every time England have batted, they've gone at 6 and over. That isn't actually true. Like they have ground out runs when they've needed to, particularly against South Africa last year in England. Actually, after they lost that test at Lords, they had innings where they scored at a normal rate, and I think. Going back to yesterday, I'm not too critical of what the batters did yesterday at 200 for 1 or 200 for 2. I think you're perfectly entitled to play your shots at that point in time, and I think playing their shots is how they'd got to 200 for 2. And when teams had gone short of them in the past, basically they'd hit them into the stands, and it had worked. They destroyed the Kiwis. Australia, a slightly different proposition, and I think that perhaps they'd, with the benefit of hindsight, they'd maybe change the shots they were playing. I think they still have attacked them, but maybe slightly in a slightly different way. Going into today, though, I'm slightly more in the brainless camp. Yesterday, I defended England, and I thought they were right, and I thought they played well, and I thought they had a great day. I thought they really had a fantastic day. Today, I think when Stokes goes in the first over, then the job becomes get as close to parity as possible, I think. And I think the initiative has been seized immediately by Australia. Like the chance for England to get 500 and be on the front foot for the rest of the Test match evaporates immediately. So I think if you're Harry Brook and you're Bairstow, and to a slightly lesser extent, some of the guys down the order. I mean, what did Robinson say that Australia had 3 number 11s? I think you could level a similar accusation at the England tail, to be perfectly honest. But I think what I'm getting at here is that
possibly 4 number 11s.
when you're 120 behind with 5 wickets in hand on a pitch that's good, in quite difficult bowling conditions, I think your job then has to be, let's try and get this below 50, and then we're well in the Test match. We get to bat last, we get to chase. We're a very scary chasing team. Australia have got a very tricky third innings at that point in time. Do they bat quickly to try and set up the win, or do they bat slowly to guarantee that they don't lose? Neither of those options are brilliant. You're in a very uncomfortable position if you're an Australian batter, and instead they lose wickets. And I think mainly Brook here, to a lesser extent Bairstow, because he is batting with the tail, but it's still not a great wicket to lose. And Pat Cummins, when he took the catch, literally couldn't believe the ball had been hit to him. Like he was genuinely stunned that the catch had come to him. I think there is an element of like, why at that point didn't you just make Australia get you out? I think when you're on the front foot, it's perfectly acceptable to get caught on the boundary trying to hit a 6 or
absolutely. I'd agree with that
to get to your century. But when you aren't, they say in Test cricket you have to earn the right to score, and England largely do. I don't think they did this morning, and I think the way their innings wrapped up showed that. One shout I'd like to give, and like I said, I didn't see this all live, but Mitchell Starc's comeback in the Test after a very difficult first 7 overs where he went round the park really has to be commended. And I thought once Australia changed gears after the Lyon injury and went for the short pitch bowling, you really have to commend the hard work that he put in.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting with Starc because he's a a bowler who quite often goes for a lot of runs because his line's not always fantastic, but he produces the occasional really snorter of a ball. Uh, but also, he's got the pace that makes the short bowling really, really challenging. And I think that's where the difference for England actually lies between this year and last year is the pace that the Australians are able to offer. I mean, when you consider that Cameron Green is the fourth quick bowler and he's bowling as fast as anyone except possibly Tongue in the Indian
Probably the
attack.
same speed. Yeah.
Yeah. Then you've got a hell of a lot to put up with. I mean, Wagner, I don't know what speed Wagner was bowling last year, but I suspect it was probably only about 80, was it?
Maybe not even.
Yeah, so that's a lot easier to hit. And this isn't a pitch where it's particularly friendly for hitting because it comes on so slowly. But, you know, they really put in a lot of effort and the reaction wasn't good. But at the end of the day, I do think that, well, I think Bairstow is not looking great with the bat at the moment. I think, you know, he got those runs in the first innings at Headingley, which could have been really, really important. But I'd like to see him bat without the burden of keeping, to be honest. And I think that's maybe possible, given that Pope may well be out of the next test after injuring his shoulder. You could bring in Folkes to keep. It's not as if you're not getting a really good batter in Folkes as well, anyhow.
I think it's certainly a possibility. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm straying very much off your question.
No. No, it was about Starc. Starc bowled well. I mean, I think the other thing that we need to give credit to is the Australian batting. It wasn't easy. Australia did well, I thought, and I think a lot of credit has to go to Khawaja again, and even to Marnus Labuschagne. I mean, it's 30. They were 30 quite hard-earned runs, with the benefit, of course, of that non-reviewed LBW that sent Broad into a catatonic rage.
It was so funny. We best describe that for anybody who didn't see it, though. I mean,
well, basically, Broad in quite quick succession has caught behind that England don't review and were correct, and LBW that England don't review correctly didn't review, and then coming back for a spell after tea, he gets Labuschagne again in front of the stumps. Labuschagne's walked quite a way across. He celeb repeals, out of the stadium. Basically, he's running up the steps into the pavilion to have a glass of champagne to celebrate the wicket. And the umpire doesn't give it, and Stokes says pretty much immediately, "I'm thinking that's going down the leg side." It doesn't get reviewed. On the way back to his mark, Broad sees a signal from the balcony, and it is Baz McCullum telling him that it was out. Obviously, they've seen it on the screen in the England dressing room, and Broad loses the plot. Fucking bunch of chumps was one of the... obviously, chumps wasn't the word that he used there. Bunch of wankers. He had a big go at Gaffney, the umpire. Real peak Stuart Broad. Unfortunately for England, Marnus pokes a ball off Anderson to point a few balls later, but it was very funny. Having said that, bigger picture is that Australia had to deal with a proper spell from Broad there. Anderson was bowling quite well with Bairstow up to the stumps, and Robinson was getting lift and bounce out of the wicket as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there were really nice bowling conditions, heavily overcast all day, and they took advantage of that. There wasn't a huge amount of swing, but even so, they kept their line in a way they didn't in the first innings. The other batter actually did pretty well was Warner. He only made 25, but he used up 75 deliveries off the new ball, which is, as far as I'm concerned, if I got an opener who bats 75 balls every time, they've done their job. But the other thing that I was going to say is Jimmy Anderson. Now, there's so many people just ready to write him off because he's 40, he'll be 41 next month, and he was pretty flat at Edgbaston, it's true. And it was, just remember what a shit wicket Edgbaston was. He was the most economical English bowler in the first innings. This innings, he's still bowled really well. He's got one wicket. But he's just Jimmy. He just keeps going and going and going. And I still think he's got a lot of life left in him. He was a bit down for a little while. I think he's back up. and I think he'll still challenge Australia considerably tomorrow.
Well, let's move on to tomorrow then, as we wrap up. And if you've got any questions, do put them in the chat. We've got one on Twitter, I think, or a couple on Twitter, so we'll get to them afterwards as well. It looks like it's Australia's to lose. If you were plotting a way back, if you were in the brains trust for England, what route is there besides saying let's hope we can chase 450 on day 4, the evening of day 4/day 5?
Well, I think the first thing is that while I think the bowlers have bowled well, I think Stokes has lacked that spark that he had at Edgbaston. And, I'm not suggesting we want funky fields changed every delivery, but I didn't get that same sense of urgency in terms of finding a way each time. And, they had fucked Khawaja in the first test, I think, when they put that umbrella field around him all of a sudden, and he was on 140 or something at the time and got himself out as a result of it. I'm not saying you do that continuously. And, you got Smith and Khawaja there who are hard to get out, both of them. But tomorrow morning is going to be a really important first session. Expect some cloud cover still. A lot of swing. I think they've just got to keep those lines going, keep their enthusiasm up. The fielding today was much better than it was on the first day for England too. They had some drive in the field, but not quite that difference in terms of field placement. So I think it will be hard work, but I think there's every chance of dismissing Australia by mid-afternoon tomorrow, which really gives them a chance of chasing a total of less than 350. Sorry, what's the lead now? Yeah,
it's 221. So if they can, if Australia are not scoring super quickly, so say they bowled them out in 45 overs tomorrow, maybe even 60 overs tomorrow, they could theoretically, 60 overs would be 400. I think that's very much top end. I think the pitch is getting a little bit tricky to bat on, and I think it will be difficult for England from here. But you never know with Lords. I mean, like, if the sun comes out, sometimes it does seem to flatten out. We've got a couple of questions, so we'll do Prashant's first. Who I think thinks this podcast is a bit too Homer for towards the England side. Since the favourite word on this podcast is unlucky, how unlucky have Australia been to play both innings under cloudy skies? Well, you can take that one as the Australia fan. Have Australia been unlucky in this test?
No, I don't think so. I think these things even out. I think Australia were very lucky at Edgbaston to have that period on, was it day 3, when it was almost dark and England lost 2 crucial wickets in that 20-minute session. These swings and roundabouts in terms of luck. I think actually Australia's been quite lucky in terms of balls that have been mishit and not hit the stumps in this test on the whole. So, and there have been umpires. The fact that the umpire didn't call that broad delivery out, which was, the umpire's fault, was great luck for Australia. So I actually think Australia has had the run of the green more than England has in this particular test match. The conditions were tough on day 1, and they've been tough today. But England were victims of that to a certain extent this morning. So,
and it's one player rule on the injury stakes as well, with Pope going off. And,
yeah. I mean, at least Pope will still bat, I'm sure. The loss of Lyon is obviously significant. I think Australia's lucky, too, to have a backup who will be there for the next test.
Oh, you mean Todd Murphy, yeah.
Todd Murphy. But I mean, Travis Head is not...
He spins the ball.
Yeah,
he spins the ball. He's got Test 5 for, hasn't he, in Sri Lanka? He's not.
Yeah,
he's not.
I think 4 for 17 or something like that. But and he gets it on a length really quickly. So it's not a mug by any means.
He's
but
probably in the Joe Root category of spinner. I'd agree with that.
I think that's it.
Oddman says, assuming England lose this series, long way to go, but likely. Which is happening first, Anderson's retirement or Stokes' sacking? I don't think they're going to sack Stokes. I mean, I think that's highly unlikely. Will Anderson retire? I doubt it.
Yeah, it depends how the rest of the series goes, I suspect. I mean, does he want to go and bowl in India in, when is it, December, January? Uh, I don't know. But with Stokes, I seriously wonder whether he needs to take the next test off to help himself recover, because he's half the man he normally is physically. And it's almost like you got a Mike Brearley out there. He's a really good captain, but physically, he's finding it really tough to do any bowling at all. And with the bat, I think he's 50% of his former self, which is still pretty fucking good. But
Well, I mean, compared to the
yeah,
replacements, it's not bad. A couple of questions from YouTube to round us off. First from Tim: why was Pope fielding to injure the other shoulder? We think that he was fielding because if he didn't field, then he might not have been able to bat 3 in the second innings. So we think he had to come out to field, and then as soon as he felt any pain, he said to the umpire, "I'm injured again," and
yeah,
went off. And now he can bat 3. Like it. He jogged off without a strap and without the physio coming on, and then there was a picture of him leaning on his leaning on his shoulder in the dressing room. So, fingers crossed if you're an England fan. Like it didn't. I mean, it's obviously not great. Maybe he misses the next test, but he batted okay, didn't he? And Tim also says, "What's the most England could theoretically chase?" I would say 350 is top end, which means they're going to have to have a very good morning. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I think
higher.
that's right. I mean, it's there's a lot of runs in this wicket, but it's not getting any easier to play on. And I don't think by day 5, I think it's going to be a pretty slow wicket. I don't think it's going to be taking a turn, but from Australia's point of view, that's probably not such a bad thing. So yeah, I think 350. Anything over 350 would be massively challenging. I think over 300 will be a real test.
And then finally, from Prajwell, has Brooke made the most criticised 50 in the history of Test cricket? Probably one of Pujara's blockathons more criticised. Look, Brooke batted well, but also badly, if that makes sense. Like
yes,
it's more runs were there for the taking, I think, and the time when he gets out, England are still very, very much in the game, and he is the game to some extent. Him being out is probably a 10% swing in Australia's favour at that point. He's the established batter, timing the ball reasonably well. You think if he can bat another 10 overs, even if he's only scoring a strike rate of 50, those 20 runs, firstly, it gives Bairstow somebody to bat with and doesn't put Bairstow under pressure to score, but also it is 20 more runs that with the greatest respect in the world, you're not going to get from Jimmy Anderson and Josh Tong or Tongue. Cool. Messi, Jez, thank you very much for joining us. Do you want to give a shout out to Guerrilla Cricket? We've got a little bit of a crossover here, so for people who don't know what that is, do you want to explain?
Yeah, thank you, Jack. We cover every England international, men's international, both test matches and white ball cricket. And we'll be doing a whole lot during the World Cup later this year. So you can come and listen to us at guerillacricket.com. There's a player on the site, or you can even watch us on doing it on YouTube if you really feel so inclined. But the key thing for us is involvement of fans, so that you tweet in, we involve you in the discussion, and we'd love to have your company. And Jack's one of our well, he's basically the young cohort in terms of our commentators. Some of us are a little older, 1 or 2 generations older than Jack, but it's fun. That's the key thing. We have a lot of fun on air. I think it's fair
Absolutely.
to say, Jack.
Yeah. And finally, if you want to support the Cricket Pod, tell somebody else about it. That's the first thing you can do. Follow us on social media at the Cricket Pod. And if you want to go a little bit further, patreon.com/the Cricket Pod, or any of the links in the show notes. Give us a little bit of help. Thanks very much, Jez. Pleasure having you on. We're going to wrap up now.
Great fun, mate.
Goodbye, everyone.